The old town square of Riverton was packed that warm Saturday evening. Strings of golden lights hung between the trees, and a local band played soft jazz near the fountain. It was the annual Summer Lantern Festival, the one night every year when the quiet coastal town felt alive with strangers and familiar faces alike. Elena Voss stood at the edge of the crowd, holding a paper cup of iced lemonade. At 26, she had the kind of quiet beauty that didn't demand attention: soft brown hair tied in a loose braid, warm hazel eyes, and a gentle smile that made people trust her instantly. She worked as a junior librarian at the town's only public library and spent most of her evenings reading or helping her elderly neighbor with groceries. Tonight, she had come alone because her best friend had canceled at the last minute. She wasn't looking for trouble. She never did. But trouble found her anyway. A few yards away, near the old stone clock tower, a man stood surrounded by three others. He was tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in a simple black shirt and dark jeans that somehow looked expensive. His face was sharp, calm, almost unreadable. Something about the way he carried himself made people give him space without realizing it. His name was Marcus Vale, though no one in River knew that yet. The three men closing in on him were not from around here. Their movements were too deliberate, their eyes too cold. One of them stepped forward and said something low and threatening. Marcus didn't flinch. He simply lifted his chin slightly, as if the situation bored him. Elena noticed the tension before anyone else. She had always been the kind of person who couldn't look away when someone was in trouble. Her heart started beating faster. The man in black was clearly outnumbered, and the three strangers looked ready to cause a scene right in the middle of the festival. Without thinking, she pushed through the crowd. "Hey," she called out, her voice louder than she expected. Several heads turned. The three men paused. Marcus looked at her, one dark eyebrow rising just a fraction. Elena's mind raced. She had no plan. She only knew she couldn't stand by and watch three men corner someone in public like this. So she did the first reckless thing that came to her mind. She walked straight up to the tall stranger, rose on her tiptoes, and kissed him. It wasn't a small peck. It was full, deliberate, and long enough that everyone nearby stopped what they were doing. The jazz band even missed a beat. Whispers rippled through the crowd like wind through wheat. When she finally pulled back, her cheeks were burning. The stranger's eyes, deep brown, almost black, were fixed on her with quiet surprise. For a split second, something unreadable passed across his face. "I'm so sorry," she whispered against his lips, barely loud enough for him to hear. "Just play along, please." One of the three men laughed coldly. Well, looks like the boss has a girlfriend after all." The word boss hung in the air, but Elena was too nervous to catch its weight. Marcus slid his arm around her waist naturally, as if they had done this 100 times before. His voice, when he spoke, was low and smooth, carrying just enough authority to make the three men hesitate. "Gentlemen," he said calmly, "this is a public festival. If you have business with me, it can wait until tomorrow. Tonight, I'm otherwise occupied." The men exchanged glances. Whatever they saw in Marcus's eyes made them back off. They melted into the crowd without another word, though one of them shot Elena a lingering, unpleasant look before disappearing. The moment they were gone, Elena stepped back, embarrassed beyond words. "I'm really sorry. I saw them cornering you, and I just panicked. I thought if they believed you were with someone, they might leave you alone. That was stupid. I shouldn't have." Marcus studied her for a long moment. The corner of his mouth twitched, the tiniest hint of amusement breaking through his otherwise serious expression. "You just kissed a complete stranger in front of half the town to protect him," he said, voice quiet. "Most people would have looked the other way." "I hate seeing anyone get ganged up on," Elena replied, still flustered. "Even if I don't know them." He tilted his head slightly. "What's your name?" "Elena. Elena Voss." "Marcus," he said simply, offering no last name. "Thank you, Elena." An awkward silence stretched between them. The festival noise rushed back in, laughter, music, the clink of glasses. Elena suddenly became painfully aware that many people were still staring at them. "I should go," she said, gesturing vaguely toward the fountain. Again, I'm sorry about the kiss. I hope I didn't make things worse for you. You didn't, Marcus replied. There was something in his tone that made her pause. It wasn't just politeness. It was certainty. Before she could walk away, he added, At least let me buy you another lemonade. The one you're holding looks like it's melting. Elena hesitated. Every sensible part of her brain told her to leave. But there was something about this man, calm, composed, strangely magnetic, that made her nod before she could stop herself. They walked together through the crowd. Marcus moved with effortless confidence, yet he kept his pace slow to match hers. He bought her a fresh drink and one for himself, though he barely touched it. They found a quiet bench near the edge of the square, away from the brightest lights. For the first few minutes, conversation was careful and surface level. She told him she worked at the library. He said he was in town for business, nothing more. But as the evening deepened, Elena found herself relaxing. Marcus listened when she spoke. He didn't interrupt. He asked gentle questions about her life, her favorite books, the town she clearly loved. In return, he shared almost nothing about himself, yet somehow made her feel like the most interesting person in Riverton. Hours slipped by. The festival began to wind down. Lanterns floated on the nearby river, casting soft reflections on the water. I should head home, Elena said finally, standing up. It's getting late. Marcus rose with her. I'll walk you. You don't have to. I want to, he said, and the quiet firmness in his voice left no room for argument. They walked the 10 blocks to her small apartment above the bakery on Maple Street. The night air was cool and smelled of sea salt and fresh bread. Marcus kept his hands in his pockets, maintaining a respectful distance. At her door, he stopped. Thank you again, Elena, he said, for what you did tonight. Not many people would have taken that risk for someone they didn't know. She smiled shyly. I'm just glad those guys left you alone. You seem like a decent person. For the first time that night, Marcus looked almost troubled. He opened his mouth as if to say something, then changed his mind. Good night, Elena Voss, he said instead. Good night, Marcus. She went inside, heart still racing from the strange evening. As she closed the door, she had no idea that the man she had just kissed in front of everyone was one of the most powerful and dangerous figures on the East Coast. Marcus Vale was the head of the Vale Syndicate, a criminal organization that controlled shipping routes, underground markets, and half the private security contracts in 3 states. He had come to Riverton quietly to handle a delicate situation involving a traitor in his ranks. The 3 men who had cornered him earlier were not rivals. They were his own men, testing whether their boss had gone soft after years of peace. The kiss had thrown them off completely. What none of them expected was that the quiet librarian would become the one variable no one could predict. The next morning, Elena woke up to a bouquet of white roses left at her door. No card. Just a simple note in elegant handwriting. Thank you for the unexpected kindness. M. She smiled despite herself. Over the following week, small things began to happen. Her broken library printer was suddenly replaced with a new one, anonymously. The leaky faucet in her apartment was fixed while she was at work. When she mentioned in passing during their walk that she loved a particular rare book that was out of print, a first-edition copy appeared on her desk at the library 2 days later. Elena wasn't naive. She started to worry. On Friday evening, she found Marcus waiting outside the library when she closed up. We need to talk, she said, crossing her arms. He nodded, as if he had been expecting this. They walked to the small park nearby and sat on the same bench where children played during the day. Marcus, who are you? She asked directly. And why are you doing all these things for me? He was silent for a long moment, staring at the darkening sky. I'm not a good man, Elena, he said finally. His voice was calm, almost gentle, but there was steel beneath it. The men you saw that night, they work for me. Or they did. I came to this town to deal with some problems in my organization. Problems that could have turned violent. Your kiss that night changed the script. It made them think I had someone to lose. It bought me time. Elena felt the ground shift beneath her. You're what? Some kind of criminal? Marcus met her eyes, without flinching. I lead a syndicate. We control certain businesses that aren't exactly legal. But I don't hurt innocent people. I never have. That's one line I've never crossed. She stood up, heart pounding. I kissed a Mafia boss in front of the entire town square. A faint, almost sad smile touched his lips. You kissed a stranger to protect him. The fact that he turned out to be me doesn't change what you did. It only changes what happens next. Elena paced a few steps, trying to process everything. Why are you telling me this now? Because I can't stay away from you, he said simply. And because you deserve the truth before this goes any further. I've had people watching over you this week, not to spy, but to make sure those 3 men don't come back for revenge. They won't. I've handled it. But I won't lie to you, Elena. My world is complicated, dangerous. And if you want me to disappear from your life right now, I will. No flowers. No gifts. No more unexpected fixes. You'll never see me again. The park was quiet except for the distant sound of waves. Elena looked at him, at the man who had listened to her talk about books for hours, who had walked her home like a gentleman, who had thanked her for a simple act of courage. I should tell you to leave, she whispered. I should be terrified. But you're not, Marcus observed softly. No, she admitted. I'm angry, and confused, and curious. Why me? Out of all the people in that square, why did you let me into your life so easily? Marcus stood and stepped closer, though he kept his hands at his sides. Because in 20 years of this life, no one has ever risked themselves for me without wanting something in return. You did it without knowing who I was. That kind of honesty is rare. It's disarming. Elena searched his face. There was no arrogance there, only a quiet honesty that surprised her. I don't know what to do with any of this, she said. Then don't decide tonight, he replied. Just know that whatever you choose, I respect it. And if you ever need anything at all, you only have to ask. He turned to leave. Wait, Elena called. Marcus stopped. She took a deep breath. I want to know the real you, not the boss, not the syndicate, just Marcus. If that's even possible. He looked back at her, and for the first time, the calm mask slipped completely. There was something vulnerable in his eyes. It might be the most dangerous thing I've ever done, he said, but yes, I'd like that too. Over the next 2 months, their relationship grew in secret and in small, careful steps. Marcus began visiting a library after closing hours. They would sit among the shelves and talk for hours, about literature, about the sea, about the small dreams Elena had for her life. He never spoke about his work unless she asked, and even then, he was careful, giving her only what she needed to understand without dragging her into the shadows. In return, Elena showed him the simple beauty of ordinary life, Saturday morning markets, quiet walks along the cliffs, evenings spent reading aloud from old novels. For the first time in his adult life, Marcus felt something close to peace. But peace in his world was always temporary. One stormy Thursday night, everything changed. Elena was locking up the library when a black car pulled up. 2 men stepped out, different from the ones at the festival. They were polite but firm. Miss Voss, Mr. Vale requests your presence. There's been an incident. Her stomach dropped. She thought about running, about calling the police. Instead, she remembered the man who had listened to her dreams and fixed her faucet and looked at her like she was the only good thing in his complicated life. She got into the car. They drove her to an elegant but secluded house on the cliffs outside town. Marcus was waiting in the living room, his shirt sleeves rolled up, a cut on his cheek still bleeding slightly. When he saw her, relief flooded his face. Elena, what happened? She asked, voice steady even though her hands were shaking. One of my oldest allies tried to take control tonight. He failed. But he knows about you now. He thinks you're my weakness. Marcus's jaw tightened. I'm sorry. I never wanted this to touch you. Elena walked over and gently touched the cut on his cheek. You're hurt. It's nothing. It's not nothing. She looked into his eyes. Marcus, I'm scared. But I'm not running. Not yet. Tell me what you need me to do. He stared at her, astonished by her courage once again. I need you to stay safe, he said. My men will protect you. But if you want out, if you want a normal life without any of this, I can arrange it. New name, new city. You'll never have to look over your shoulder again." Elena was quiet for a long time. Rain lashed against the windows. "No," she said finally. "I don't want to disappear. I want to help you find another way. A way where you don't have to be the boss forever. Where you can choose something different." Marcus let out a slow breath. "That path is almost impossible." "Almost," she repeated. "Not completely." In the months that followed, Elena became the quiet force behind the most unlikely transformation the syndicate had ever seen. She never asked Marcus to abandon his responsibilities overnight. Instead, she helped him see the human cost of every decision. She listened when he spoke about the weight he carried. She challenged him gently when old habits surfaced. And in return, Marcus began to loosen his grip on the darker parts of his empire. He started moving money into legitimate businesses, shipping companies, community projects, even funding the expansion of the town library. It wasn't easy. There were threats. There were nights when he came to her door exhausted and silent. There were moments when Elena wondered if she had made a terrible mistake. But there were also mornings when she woke up to Marcus making coffee in her tiny kitchen, humming an old jazz tune from the festival night. There were evenings when he read to her from the books she loved, his deep voice softening around the words. There were quiet promises exchanged under the stars on the cliffs. 1 year after that fateful kiss in the town square, Marcus stood with Elena at the same festival, though this time the crowd knew them as a couple. The 3 men from that first night were long gone. Some had left the organization. Others had been quietly retired with generous settlements. As the band played the same soft jazz, Marcus took Elena's hand. "I never thanked you properly," he said. "For what?" "For seeing a stranger that night and choosing to save him instead of walking away." Elena smiled, the same gentle smile that had disarmed him from the very beginning. "I didn't save a mafia boss that night," she said softly. "I kissed a man who needed someone to believe he could be more than his reputation. And every day since, I've watched you prove me right." Marcus leaned down and kissed her, slowly, deliberately, in front of everyone once again. But this time, there was no fear, no calculation, only truth. The crowd cheered. Lanterns floated on the river. And in the heart of a small coastal town, a story began that no one could have predicted. A quiet librarian and the man the world once feared, building something new together, one honest choice at a time. Because sometimes the bravest thing a person can do is kiss a stranger and then stay long enough to help him become the man he was always meant to be.